When they say it can't be done, be the first to do it. That is something that Chamari Athapaththu lives by. She uses it as her WhatsApp quote. And in cricket, that's also what she does. Over the past 15 years, she has been the first to achieve many things for Sri Lankan cricket. 2010, just 7 ODIs into her career, she became the first Sri Lankan woman to make a century in a limited overs game. Between then and August 2024, she was Sri Lanka's only centurion in the white ball format. Chamari crossed 111 times in the same period against 9 different opponents. Chamari Athapaththu was not the best batter in Sri Lanka. She was their batting. Support us on Patreon and help us keep making our content. Join for exclusive perks like the AMAs, the live calls, and to chat with me directly on Discord. You can also enjoy ad-free content, early podcasts, and access to my emailer. While that first century was a big milestone, the most important knock of her career came 7 years later in 2017 at the Women's World Cup in England. Sri Lanka were up against the perennial favourites Australia, and on paper, it's obviously not going to be a contest. And the scoreboard actually still says that Australia won. But not before Chamari took apart their bowling piece by piece. She dismantled them to such a degree that they never actually fully recovered, leaving them open to a similar onslaught from Harmanpreet Kaur in the semi-finals. And that time, they did lose. What Chamari really did was prove that ancient proverb correct.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Chamari's 178 in that game, that's a hell of a score, really did change her life. To hit the 3rd highest score in ODI cricket was something, but to do it against one of the most dominant teams in the game meant that suddenly all eyes were on her. In that same year, she became the first Sri Lankan woman to play in a franchise league when she signed for the Yorkshire Diamonds in the now defunct Kia Super League. But invitations to play the WBBL, the Women's T20 Challenge, quickly followed. With the Sri Lankan men's team struggling, having one of the best players in the world as a woman actually helped grow the game in Sri Lanka and also her brand. Between that game against Australia and Sri Lanka's last of the 2020 World Cup, Athapaththu really took to the Aussies, who remained, barring that semi-final exit, the most dominant side perhaps that the sport has ever seen. 100 in the ODI and T20 formats during Sri Lanka's first tour of Australia in 2019 showed that. She was just obviously the real deal. Chamari had always been a dangerous batter, and she had long been at the top of the scouting report. But now she was beginning to find consistency and even more power. The Australian hundreds just elevated her even further. However, then the pandemic came. And it didn't come at a good time for like any human being, but it was particularly bad for her career. However, you can't actually blame the pandemic for what happened with the Sri Lankan Cricket Board. They decided that their women's team didn't have to play for 687 consecutive days. Meaning from March 2020 until January 2022, Sri Lanka did not have a women's cricket team. And if you're thinking maybe they played a lot of domestic cricket, they played 1 tournament in that time. I mean, it was more like Sri Lanka forgot that they had a women's program. And it hurt the team's progress, but it also meant that Chamari lost nearly 2 years of her peak. Beyond just missing internationals, she also didn't get to continue to develop her game. And when her team wasn't playing any cricket, it meant that she didn't get the same kind of franchise opportunities that she may have got when she was, I don't know, smashing Australia everywhere. And remember, this was a time when the Sri Lankan women's cricketers were paid barely anything in comparison to the men. This was a huge blow to the best performing cricketer in Sri Lanka at that point. And it was during that time that she considered retirement. Having fought so hard to get where she was, she found herself helpless in the face of terrible administration. And while the game grew globally, her career was stalling. The only reason she didn't actually retire is because she received a call from Lasith Malinga, who'd been her long-time confidant. And he convinced her to continue playing international cricket, or at least wait for Sri Lanka to play international cricket again. And when her team finally started playing again, she was determined to make all the runs that she'd missed out on. In the 2 years preceding the 2024 World Cup, she's been on an absolute tear, making 600s against 5 opponents across formats. Half of her career hundreds within 2 years. And when we were thinking of a player that she's most like, it probably is a Sri Lankan, but a Sri Lankan man, Aravinda De Silva. Both obvious talents, yet they started off their careers in incredibly weak teams and so couldn't really reach the heights that their talent deserved. Like Aravinda, once the team actually got stronger around Athapaththu, she went from being a very good player to a great. And that's because it is very hard to bat from both ends. In the last 2 years, she has scored 1,200 plus runs in T20 internationals, an average of 34 and a strike rate of 127. Her record in the 13 years previous to that was an average of 22 and a strike rate of 103. And her true numbers in the last couple of years are even more astonishing. She has a true strike rate of plus 27 and a true average of plus 8. Only Nat Sciver-Brunt, Risha Ghosh, and Danny Wyatt have scored quicker at a better average. And Chamari has made more than double the runs that they have, with a fraction of the professional support they all receive. And when you compare it to our own players, it's even worse. Of all the Sri Lankan batters who have played during this period, only Kavisha Dilhari has a true average and true strike rate above 0. She's the only other above par player that Sri Lanka has. So Chamari isn't just better than every one of her teammates. She may as well be on a different planet to them. And it's no coincidence that just as Chamari has gone from a very, very good player to basically a great, her team has become a competitive force in the women's game for the first time in their history. Since the Sri Lankan Cricket Board actually remembered that they existed, they won 60% of their T20 internationals. If we consider only the last 2 years prior to the T20 World Cup, that figure goes up to 68%. A first ever win against New Zealand, series wins away from home against both England and South Africa, as well as an Asian Games silver medal and Asian Cup title have all come during that period. And while the team has achieved so much, Chamari herself has become the first Sri Lankan woman to win an ICC award, taking home the Women's ODI Player of the Year. Maybe most impressively though, she was named captain of both the ODI and T20 teams at the same time. And while they haven't had as much success in the ODI cricket, Sri Lanka are still in a really good position to qualify automatically for the next World Cup in India, something that they failed to do in the previous Women's Championship cycle. In fact, the abandonment of the qualifiers meant that they missed out on the 2022 tournament altogether, which is another crime against Chamari because that would have been in her peak. And of course, their recent success has largely been down to her scorching run. While she's been great in T20 cricket, ODIs is probably what she is most suited to. And in this Women's Championship cycle, she has been at her very best. Only Nat Sciver-Brunt has a better true average, and no one with more than 500 runs has scored as quickly as Chamari has. She has been one of the best batters in the world across all formats in the last 2 years, and then you have to factor in that she can also bowl. She's Sri Lanka's third highest wicket taker in ODIs in this cycle, and she has 24 wickets, taking one every 20 balls in T20s over the last 2 years. When we talk about Sri Lankan women's cricket in history, it really is the 2013 ODI World Cup. And everyone thought that would be a turning point for them. That's not really what happened. This time there is a real feeling that things will be different. Sri Lankan cricket have restructured the domestic setup for women, contracted a group of 60 players, and finally are starting to invest some of the money in age group cricket. Chamari herself is quite comfortably the most recognisable female sportsperson in the country, and now the commercial opportunities for her are also coming through. Coming into this T20 World Cup, for the first time ever, there were expectations that Sri Lanka would be a good shout to push for a semi-final spot. That did not happen. Instead, they have finished dead last in their group. And Chamari has taken the losses predictably hard. At 34, she has hinted at retirement several times already, and she knows she doesn't have too many opportunities to take her side into the knockout rounds of a global competition. Despite all of her success, Chamari is just no stranger to disappointment. But that doesn't mean that her career is not completely remarkable. No one expected one of the best women players on earth to come from a country that basically forgot they had a women's team for 2 years. Chamari Athapaththu is the first legend of Sri Lankan women's cricket. But even as they struggled in this World Cup, because of what she has done, she will not be the last. I have a book out with Abhishek Mukherjee, and it is called Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. And it's about the stories of how each team beat England for the first time. We go all the way back to the demon Fred Spofforth getting annoyed at W.G. Grace for acting a little bit like Alex Carey. And then we come all the way to present times with Rashid Khan's England's redemption. We cover every single team to beat England in a major international, but we also talk about the incredible stories like the barefoot basher from Fiji that almost played for New Zealand. In fact, this book is full of tales like that, like how Pakistan lost a top batter after he was on the run from an angry husband of a movie star he was having an affair with, and also how one future captain of his nation realised he might have to go out and bat at Lords and that he didn't own his own pads. Cricket was used as a tool by the empire, but what happens when those nations grow up and get good at it? Find Overthrowing Cricket's Empire on Amazon today.